This episode is sponsored by W Wellness. I started working with W Wellness a few weeks ago, and I can't begin to tell you how much better I've been feeling. My energy's up, my joints are less achy, and the difference in my eye health has been phenomenal. I just feel like myself again. W Wellness is the UK's first expert-led wellness platform. I got paired with a real nutritionist who really listened, asked the right questions, and helped build a plan that worked for me. Everything's tailored, simple, and science-backed, and honestly, it's been the first thing that's actually stuck. I'm still on my 12-week journey and I'll keep sharing how it's going. But if you're feeling a bit off and you don't know where to start, this is it. Go to w-wellness.co.uk. It might just be the reset that your body has been asking for. Hi, welcome back. I'm Helen, therapist, author, and your host of this podcast, I Don't Think We Talk Enough About. And today I'm talking with Emma Reed Turrell. She's a brilliant psychotherapist. For some of you who've listened to the show for a long time, Emma was on about a year ago talking about her book, What Am I Missing? But today I invited her back to talk about friendships. I view Emma as a bit of an expert on friendships because she hosted Best Friend Therapy with Elizabeth Day. She had her own podcast called Friendship Therapy. And I invited her on today to talk about all the dilemmas that so many of my listeners have put to me on friendships. And so we really pulled apart what is a good friend, what makes a good friend, how to deal with complicated friendships, but also to look at our own role in friendships and who we are and how we show up and whether we show... actually, Emma brought a brilliant concept in today's episode about, which you'll hear. I record this intro after the show so that I can give more context. But Emma talks about a brilliant concept called, are we protecting or are we connecting? And it's so insightful when we think about the way that we show up in our friendships and how we connect. We then answered so many of your questions around the dilemmas you're having, around the way friends show up for us, how we show up for them, any issues you were having. It's jam-packed and I could have spoken to Emma for hours. So I truly hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening. Emma, welcome back to my podcast.
Oh, thank you, Helen. I was just so delighted to get a return ticket.
I know, I don't have many people come back, so it's really nice.
It's a privilege and an honour. Thank you.
No, it's so lovely. And also, you were in the studio last time talking about your brilliant book.
Oh,
And this time I've got you back to talk about friendships because I genuinely view you as a bit of an expert.
well, I love that. Thanks very much. I mean, I'm happy to always take a view as an expert. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's sort of the last time I saw you, it was in the studio. We had this conversation, didn't we, all about, I was doing the book and it was about blind spots. And one of the chapters in the book is all about friendships. What blind spots do we have around friendships? And then I worked on best friend therapy with my best friend, Elizabeth Day, and friendship therapy evolved out of that as a podcast. And I was amazed at the appetite for conversations about friendship. I genuinely don't think we talk enough about them because this is something that affects all of us at all stages and ages of life. And of course, therefore, it's going to bring up, well, all the highs, but plenty of lows.
I know. And as you were saying that, Emma, I was thinking, I was chatting to someone else on my podcast yesterday about dysfunctional families, and we were talking. She's a therapist in the States, and we were talking about how we just don't talk about it enough. So we assume that no one else struggles.
Totally.
And as you were talking then, I was thinking, we do the same with friendships, don't we? We don't talk about the struggles of friendships because as if there's something wrong with us if our friendships aren't blooming and kind of, abundant, and that it's a reflection of ourselves. Sometimes it might be, but that shame can really creep in there around friendship issues too.
Absolutely. I think it's a sort of societal measure of our worth if we find it easy or hard to make friends, if we are an easy friend, or if we find ourselves bumping up against issues in friendships. Well, that must be something about us, just like you say, because friendships are easy breezy, aren't they? There's no reason for them to be anything other except, of course, there is.
There is, and because we don't ever hear stories
Yeah.
of people struggling.
Yeah. And yet you'll have them, I'll have them. I mean, just being here, you and I, we could probably spend an hour talking about issues in our own friendships because that's just part of being a changing human being, isn't it? That we will start certain contracts with all the best intentions and then we will evolve and grow and change and not necessarily be a good fit.
I love the way you said that about growing, changing, evolving. And, as you were talking then about you and me sitting here talking about our own friendship issues, and I'm sort of struck by the fact that as therapists, we don't, well, I don't particularly self-disclose because that was the
Mm.
way that we were really taught. And it's always like, I don't know about you. Do you self-disclose much?
I self disclose a lot more now. And I think that's because, well, there are lots of different things. One is because I feel like my therapy has become so much more maverick the longer I've practiced. And it's just a recipe that works for me. And I believe it works for my clients, but also because I think there's something so valuable in this world about normalizing first, about pacing with someone before potentially we lead, something about just giving a little of ourselves and creating a safe space by doing, not just saying. So for me, that self-disclosure has actually become, it's quite important now, I think.
No, I agree. And I feel that shift, and I can feel the shift coming in myself about, as you say, as you work through your own personal therapy and that human layer, why do we then pretend that we don't have a human layer there? It just
Yeah.
doesn't quite fit sometimes, does it? So, yeah, so when you spoke there about friendships, in your own life, I've definitely experienced that as well. And the changing friends
Yeah.
as I've grown older and friends that I never ever thought would disappear
Absolutely.
that actually aren't in my life anymore. And gosh, I can even feel sad thinking about it, but it happens for a reason, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it really does, and it's a sort of, well, it's a well-used saying, isn't it, that we have sort of friends for seasons and reasons, and I can't remember the rest of it, but there's something about this idea of, first, at least in my practice, defining what a friend is before we start judging the
Mm.
merits of a friendship or wondering whether a friendship is in our present or was in our past only. What is a friendship? And I'm curious from you, what's a friendship to you? How would you define a friendship?
Gosh, the first thing that came, I thought, God, that's such a big question, isn't it? It feels it's never actually that easy to answer. But my initial reaction was, it's a feeling.
Interesting.
It's that feeling of safety,
Mm,
of connection, of enjoyment that
mm,
someone would. God, it takes vulnerability to be a friend as well, doesn't it? Because
100%.
about being your vulnerable self, that they enjoy being with you and you enjoy being with them. Care,
Mm.
kindness, checking in, fun.
Yeah.
But actually, the fun element, but also recognizing that different friends have different roles.
Mm.
And, I'm thinking of a couple of friends in mind as I think about this, that, and I always use this expression that one pair of shoes can't do every job.
Absolutely. I mean, that's true.
Can't, so one friend can't fulfill all of the needs of being a friend. So
No.
I have different friends for different aspects of me,
Yeah.
as I'm sure I am to them.
Right. And even then, you're talking about it. I'm going back to this very literal understanding of friends being for seasons. I might be very happy in my Birkenstocks all summer, but come the autumn, I'm going to look for something different. And I probably have certain friendships that are brilliant for that kind of wide open skies, those sunny days. And then when my energy is different, when I'm starting to kind of hunker down or feel a bit smaller or quieter, I need to I need to be allowed to slip off my Birkenstocks and put on my comfy slippers and curl up cozy at home, whatever that friendship looks like in real life. And I loved the way you talked about friendship being a feeling because, well, let's go with that. By the very nature of it, we know feelings aren't forever.
No,
So why, therefore, would a friendship be?
I know, I know. I know. And so so let's go back to what you said about defining a friend.
Mm-hmm.
What do you use as your definition for a good friend? I think we
A
have,
good friend.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with the idea that it's a feeling. For me, the feeling is someone who thinks the best of me,
Yeah.
someone for whom I want the best, someone who shares a place in time and space with me that is founded on generosity and goodwill.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, it's very much about this sense of positive intention. And I have an 11-year-old daughter. She came on friendship therapy
I
in the
loved that.
last season.
I
I mean, I
loved.
loved it too. And
Oh,
our listeners loved it because there was something so precious, I think, about hearing those 11-year-old parts of us again in the way we experience friendship. And when I asked her for her definition of friendship, she said someone who's nice to her. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's incredibly simple and profound.
yeah.
And actually, is it all that much more complicated than that? And I said to her, oh, but is there a role for a sort of a sharpening iron in a friend, somebody who can kind of hold you to account and, really help you work on yourself and be self-aware? And she said, well, not really. No, I've got my parents for that, which is fair enough. I kind of think myself, maybe that's actually also true. I've got my parents for that, at least my internalized parents holding me to account and, calling me out on stuff. Maybe a friend genuinely could just be someone who's nice to us.
I know. I mean, the wisdom of
I know.
1-year-old, it's always they can talk without limits, can't they? They
Yeah.
just, they haven't got those barriers yet that
Yeah.
will stop them talking freely. And obviously, it was such a free conversation because it was with her mom, and that was so beautiful. But yeah, someone who's nice to you. I mean, I could feel because I obviously work very somatically, and I could feel myself like get a bit tense about the thought of a friend, I don't know, maybe being harsh or holding me accountable because I'm not sure that, I'm not sure there's a need for that because I always think there's another way to communicate that isn't harsh,
Yeah.
isn't, speaking from an I statement, the friend, I felt this, or like, I considered this was, whatever the situation is. I think even harshness can be done with softness. I
Yes.
don't think it needs to be bristly.
No. And it brings me back to that bedrock of generosity and goodwill. If I am going to be honest and it's going to be painful, I'm going to do it with generosity and goodwill.
Yeah, absolutely that. And then it's looking at that reciprocation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that kind of that flow, that
Yeah.
just beautiful flow of a friendship. But there's more than that, isn't there? Because there can be some friends that I don't know if you feel like this, that you can have really limited contact with in between visits, but they're like one of your best friends when you meet up. But you don't need that daily contact or that constant checking in. My life's incredibly busy with 3 children, my husband, my
Yeah.
career. It's very hard, and I sometimes, as I'm stopping in my sentences there, it's very hard to always be available for everyone 24/7, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I sometimes check myself and think, oh gosh, am I being a good friend?
Mm.
And but I think you have an internal compass, clock,
Mm.
morality that, oh, it's about time I checked in, or you
Mm-hmm.
pick up on it, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And I suppose I do that, as you said, the reciprocity piece, because when we were defining our good friend, we didn't say someone who is always available to me.
No,
And yet, when we're imagining ourselves as the quote unquote good friend, we're measuring whether we've been available enough.
I know, I know.
So we can hold ourselves to these very different standards as well.
Yeah, hugely. You're so right. And I wonder why we're both aware that we do that.
Yeah.
I can sometimes feel myself thinking, oh, I haven't made contact for a while with them. And then I have to catch myself and think, but they haven't with me either. It's okay. It's okay. I don't have to be that person all the time.
Yeah. And I think partly this is what I've heard on the podcast. I've heard in clients who've come to me to do friendship work. Some of it's about how we first made our earliest friends. When we think about the sort of science of friendship, I suppose it's that sense that we are growing up enough, know that we are individuals. We've started to even separate from our family of origin. We've started to understand that support network's important and it's our foundation, our roots. but now we're maybe in nursery, we're going to school, we're doing activities, we're finding things in common, we share interests or hobbies or pastimes, and we start to reach out beyond those, at least ideally, unconditional bonds of family.
Yeah.
And we start to take risks. Will I still be acceptable to this person who, well, they have the option to choose me or not?
Yeah.
So now I need to start thinking a little bit more about the conditions of this friendship.
Yeah.
I need to start thinking about whether or not I'm going to get dropped. You know, if we go back to those earliest friendships, what was it like when your friend at school played with someone else in the playground, saved someone else a seat in the lunch hall? These were moments of deep betrayal and loss. And I think because of those early experiences of giving up some of the unconditional bonds of family and venturing into this world where actually, well, if we're not careful, we might be rejected.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we don't fit in, we might be exiled. We start to have all of those biological processes kicking in that say, well, crikey, I still want to be part of a pack. I'm going to need a peer group. What's the contract for being in this peer group? You know, do I have to be into, well, as it is now, Taylor Swift, or do I have to prefer Sabrina Carpenter, or what are the rules? And I think we carry that forward into adulthood. You know, what are the rules? Should I have checked in every week? Should I have offered dinner at mine? Should I have a party for my birthday, even though I hate having parties for my birthday, speaking for myself? What are the rules of the friendship? Because I still don't want to get dropped. I still don't want to lose my seat on the bus.
No, I know. Oh gosh, Emma, it just goes back to those inner child feelings, doesn't it? You can feel it. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about, viewing this through that lens of attachment as well. And just, it's really difficult, isn't it? If you grew up in that kind of anxious attachment, that can really impact how you reach out and meet friends, how you maintain that friendship, how you cope with them going for coffee with someone else.
Yes.
I'm thinking about, so many questions come in and we will come to that, but lots of questions came in around toxicity, toxic friends, conscious of them being, I don't love the word toxic. I really don't, Emma, but
Well, let's use a different word. What word fits?
negative, or I don't know,
I
or
might even call them complicated. I mean, I'm not even sure we even know if they are negative, but there is there is discomfort.
discomfort. I think complicated is perfect. That complicated relationships. And we can't assume, I think, or sit here and say that every relationship has to be uncomplicated. Um, but we also can't have too many complicated relationships in our life. I'm thinking about the studies they've done, particularly the Harvard one, isn't it? About happiness and
Yeah.
longevity is the 80-year study they did. I can't remember the researchers behind it now. Well, oh, I've forgotten it. I'll link it. But they talked so openly, didn't they, about the fact that it's the quality of our relationships in our life that keep us happy and, live for longer, and our mental health and our physical health. So we can't almost take on too many complicated friendships, can we?
Well, I don't know, because I start to wonder, is it the friendship that's complicated? Or, use that idea of looking through a lens earlier. Is it the pressure we're putting on ourselves to show up differently in different friendships? There's something I suppose I'm thinking about. For example, one of those quote unquote toxic friendships that I hear often is this idea of someone who ghosts another person. And we're going to come on and talk about more of those listener questions later. But just to bring this one in at this point, sometimes when I think about that and I talk to clients about that, I'll talk a little bit in a way without having known the language of the shoes. I'll talk about the shoes because actually it's a very different proposition. If I've only got one pair of shoes and that pair of shoes is unavailable to me, I cannot find that pair of shoes in the morning. I need to leave the house. I start to panic. If I've become so reliant on a single pair of shoes, the impact of that pair of shoes being under the sofa is going to be so different to the impact of that temporary loss if I have another pair of shoes I can wear, if I've got different shoes for different occasions, if maybe even I've learned to walk bare feet. I mean, let's take this metaphor and really stretch it.
Go for it.
Because there is something about, to what extent was that a toxic friendship versus to what extent did I have expectations of that friendship that weren't realistic?
Yeah.
And so, yes, it ended up falling over, but not necessarily because it was complicated by its very nature. Maybe it was just a different proposition. So one of the ways I understood it was actually working with a couples therapist who helped me understand through this lens of emotionally focused therapy how we have really two settings in our nervous system. And as therapists, we will use all sorts of different language for this. And fundamentally, we're all saying the same thing. Her language was, one can either protect or connect. And so when we are running a protect script, when we are running that sense of scarcity or fear of loss or criticism or judgment, or we feel exposed, we feel really vulnerable, our nervous system is incapable of connecting. It can't make those outreaches of generosity and goodwill. It can't self-regulate to bring us into a space where we can be both ourselves and intimate with another human being. And so we end up in that moment doing one of two things. We either under differentiate, and so we become someone who is very enmeshed and reaches out and needs somebody to soothe us and regulate us. Or we might over differentiate and become extreme in our individuation.
Yeah.
Again, we're kind of talking attachment styles, but it starts to make me wonder how many of those toxic friendships are actually friendships in which our nervous system has got stuck in a protect setting as opposed to a connect setting, because the connect setting, you'll know it, they're the friendships which are easy, effortless, fulfilling without that sense of strain or stress, still perhaps with lumps and bumps in them, but no need to pull back and hunker down. So I get curious as to when we start to name a friendship or a friend as toxic or dysfunctional or unhealthy, whether we could do with taking a little look at the level to which we are under or over differentiating in that situation.
Brilliant. I love that, protecting or connecting. I think it's great because you're right. We all have such different language but we're all leaning towards the same thing, and not being able to. You physically can't connect if you're in that protective state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too much is at stake, isn't it? You can't, I can see my body language then. It's like tense. You can't be you, can you?
You can't be
You
you.
can't be you. And then how on earth do you connect if you're not being
right?
you?
Yeah. And if they're not being them, and that so often happens in our friendships, we will bring a certain edge or need or piece of unfinished business into a relationship, whether it's a friendship or a colleague or a romantic relationship. To what extent is that edge bumping up against their edge? They're kind of those friction moments that, again, we could look at and say, well, that's toxic. They're actually huge opportunities. They're spaces in which we could level up and out. We could grow through friction and discomfort.
Do you see in your work, because obviously you work with, particularly on the podcast, you worked with looking at friendships. I found it fascinating, the thought of someone just analysing a friendship issue like that. Thinking about couples therapy, friendship therapy, just amazing that, it's relational therapy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you find that people did resolve issues, or is it very difficult if the other person isn't aware of their responsibility in it?
You're right. It's rare because I think we've done so much work in destigmatizing therapy. We're still behind the US, but this is fantastic compared to when I started practicing 20 years ago. The landscape is unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Individual therapy, yep, that's okay. Couples therapy, yes, right time and place, that's okay. Friendship therapy, well, we're not quite sure, really, because don't forget, it's still supposed to be effortless. So isn't it still a failing in you or me
No, I know.
If we can't just get on with our friends. But the ones who do come, of course, they understand something about their friendship, but they also understand so much more about what they're bringing
Yeah.
from the rest of life, just as we would in couples therapy. Yes, we understand the relationship, but actually, we need to understand why when you make that expression and I don't empty the dishwasher, suddenly I'm not me and you're not you. And we need that information.
I know. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, isn't it beautiful that people would think this might be saying more about myself.
Mm.
Isn't it beautiful that people could think to go to therapy for something like that? Where so often you see people turn away from those friendships.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's not giving me what I would enjoy having in my life. So I'm going to turn to the easier friendship.
Yes.
You can see that happen so often, less so than with couples. They will try and work at that relationship, but there shouldn't really be any difference, should there?
Oh, I don't know. Now I've just used the big should word. I don't know. As soon as you say should, I think,
Oh, sorry. But you can see what I'm trying to say here.
Absolutely. There's huge potential.
Apply it.
Yeah, of course we could. And I think this is part of what is complicated about friendships is one of the reasons why we'll see couples in couples therapy is because, well, it's a kind of one in, one out deal for most of us. So I need to work this one out. Is this working? How can I work on this? This is the one I'm committed to. Maybe this is the one that I've got a mortgage with or a marriage certificate or a family. But until I've resolved this one, at least technically, the vacancy is filled for a partner. So I do need to kind of figure this one out, work it through. With friends, because we have, again, technically unlimited vacancies, we can have as many friends as we want. So we can just keep kind of putting that one on the back burner, the ones that aren't serving us, because we can recruit new friends.
Yeah.
Except I'm not sure that we can emotionally, having those tabs open on our browser for friends who actually aren't our friends because perhaps they don't meet our friendship values or we don't meet theirs. I think that does use up bandwidth. We don't have infinite capacity for friends.
No.
I wonder though whether, again, if I go back to my 11-year-old, when she has friendship issues at school, of which there are plenty because she's in year 6, and, it is rife with those kinds of, again, very developmentally appropriate tussles and negotiations and misunderstandings. And these are people who are, a long way from understanding themselves, if indeed we ever do. But what she will often hear is, well, we told the teacher, or there was this upset. Well, just rise above it, girls, or just have a hug and make up. Or, well, why don't you play with someone else? There's very little appetite from the adults to make a safe space to unpack what's actually happening in that dynamic. So I don't think we're taught at an early age that we can have those conversations and say, hey, listen, when you do this thing, I know it feels funny to you, but for me, it actually really stings. So we're not really giving our children the language in friendships to make those kind of bids for something more authentic and more connected. We're sort of saying, shh, it's fine. They're just friends.
Yeah, I got, and you think, and you're bringing in there so clearly just the script we pick up that we internalize from so young, from those friendship bases. When I did adore that episode with your daughter, and there was so much in it, and I'll link it actually in
Thank
the show
you.
notes because I
Yeah.
think an awful lot of people get an awful lot from it because of reflecting back on their own childhood and friendships. But you're right, people shush it down, don't they, as opposed to hold the space. And,
Yeah.
and then you just feel uncomfortable then talking about friendship issues as you get older. And it leads me on to thinking about something that came in for me recently with someone. And they were talking about and it's not a new thing by any means, but it just brought it to the forefront in my mind about how so many of us can get caught up in thinking that we're meant to have lots and lots of friends. You
Yeah.
know, we're out every weekend, we're picnics through the summer, it's big groups, it's holidays, it's festivals, and this big group that we see all over social media that becomes that we think is the norm. And then sitting with and thinking, well, I don't have that in my life. And that can bring feelings of immense loneliness, can't it?
Yeah. And inadequacy and inferiority. What's wrong with me? I'm failing at this thing called friendship.
Ever feel like your brain's stuck in slow mode? You're not the only one. That's why I want to introduce you to lion's mane and ginkgo from Higher Nature. This natural combo is designed to help lift the mental fog, supporting memory, focus, and overall clarity. Lion's mane helps fuel brain function, while ginkgo encourages healthy blood flow where it matters most. It's clean, it's effective, and it's rooted in science. Visit highernature.com and use code TALK25 for 25% off. TALK25 for 25% off. Running a practice is beautiful, but it can be a lot. Between client care, notes, billing, and insurance, it adds up fast. That's why I recommend using Simple Practice, a complete EHR that simplifies every part of your workflow as a therapist. The biggest game changer is their new AI note taker. It listens during sessions and creates a draft of the notes. In seconds, it reviews, tweaks, and finishes documentation in a fraction of the time. It's HIPAA compliant, secure, and so easy to use. With that time back, you have more time to focus on your clients and yourself. If you're new to Simple Practice, you can use my link in the show notes for 70% off your first 4 months, plus a free 30-day trial of Note Taker. And if you're already a user, you can still try Note Taker free for 30 days. What advice, and it's not a question that came in, although it was hinted at about adult relationships, but what advice would you give to someone there that is seeing this image of that is what is the norm and I don't meet up to that?
Well, I guess we get the sort of the one, fundamental truth about social media, which is, well, it's all nonsense, isn't it? And I know that I don't post many, many moments in my life. So if I know that, it's on me to know that about others. That if I'm not posting my lumpy, bumpy bits of life, they're probably not either.
Yeah, of course.
So for me to compare my inside to their outside, we're going to find that I don't fare well. This is me knowing my truth versus what's been curated for their grid. And I know that rationally, logically. If I'm absolutely honest, have I been able to do that every single time, even with the training and the experience that I have? No. Have I therefore decided to have a very different relationship with social media? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm honest, and this is really honest, if I go onto social media other than videos of dogs doing funny things, I can quite often come off social media feeling worse than I did when I went on. And so I use that feeling, that's my reminder. There's nothing wrong with me, but social media is not useful to me right now. And it might just be because of the frame of mind I'm in that day. But there's also something about recognizing that it's not what others have, it's what you want. So yes, whether it's on social media or a conversation at the school gates or out on a Friday evening with friends or walking the dog in the park, if I hear that someone has something and I want it, what I'm going to feel potentially is something that I think we know as jealousy. It's kind of,
Yeah.
I want that thing that you've got. And I found it really helpful to reframe jealousy as an emotion, to understand it as a very natural urge to guard or protect something. So there's this difference between jealousy and envy. When I envy something, at least when we look at emotional tolerance work, we're taught that that means I kind of want to break it or destroy it in someone else. Whereas when I'm jealous, sometimes it means I want it and I want to guard it and I want it and I want to have it.
Yeah.
And the feeling of jealousy is typically there to show us Something is fragile or precious, and we either don't have it or it's not looking very secure right now. E.g., perhaps that's showing me like, crikey, I've got some friendships that need some of my attention. I need to put some energy there. Sometimes I think we feel jealous when actually the relationship that hasn't got our attention sufficiently is the one we have with ourselves.
Yes.
So it might be, oh my goodness, I'm noticing these people on their fabulous holiday, and look, they've gone away on a gal's weekend, and they're, sipping Prosecco, and they're lying by a pool, and they look like they're living their best life. What is it about my relationship with myself in this moment that's really firing something about? And it might be that I need to spend a bit more time with myself. We talk about the artist's way as a way for people to understand how to create, or we talk about date yourself before you go on the apps. But befriend yourself, be a good friend to yourself.
I know.
I also would probably give that third piece of advice that's around, see if you can be true to your needs, not others' needs. As in, for me, I prefer a very small circle of friends. For others, they might really enjoy having lots of different people that they can dip in and out of and do all sorts of different social activities with. But it's really important that I'm not trying to be them and failing, because I will. Even if I did make all those friends, I wouldn't feel the way I want to feel. Or whether I can accept, actually, my truth is I like this small, intimate, close group of friends. I also like spending time by myself. So I would have to give up some of my likes and loves and wants in order to have what I see this person have. So it's about being an honest accountant in your life.
Brilliant. As you were saying that, Emma, I love that. Absolutely love that answer. And I think so many people would get so much from that, because that, and you said it just as I was feeling it, that sense of self-honesty. To have all of that could also mean so much more that you actually wouldn't want.
Totally.
The time on your own, the not having to commit to every weekend or to be going away all the time. Actually,
I don't want that.
well, I know I don't want that, so I'm fine. But for
Yeah.
some people, that sense of self-honesty is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we can sometimes think that's what we want, but actually, you look at who you are.
Yeah. But let's also in that same beat, because you and I, we know we share that kind of slightly more naturally introverted state, and we'd be very happy walking our golden retrievers at the weekend. However, separate golden retrievers. However, I also want to honor the fact that for some people that is what they want, and they are lonely. They genuinely do. When they're being their honest accountant in their life, they want that social group. And then it's that difficult space, isn't it, of, well, I'm going to have to take a risk now, because I have to risk rejection. I have to risk stumbling and falling and failing and tripping my way through life and meeting people in order to try and create these new connections. And what I would say is, see if you can unlearn some of those conditions of worth that you might have had to apply in the playground. See if you can start to take small steps forward that are authentic and honest. It doesn't have to be full disclosure. You don't have to show up, warts and all, on the first conversation as you queue up for your coffee. But try to make the interactions that you have honest. Little by little, share more of who you really are, and you'll be, I think, really pleasantly surprised that you make connections with people who want to be friends with you.
Beautiful. That was lovely, wasn't it? Because you're flipping it there. It's about the self, but also people that want to be friends with you. And
Yeah.
that's something that so many people miss. They always think it's about them, don't they? That was brilliant. Emma, let's move on to the next. I could
Go
just
for it.
forget that I'm doing a podcast at the moment. I'm just chatting away, listening. Let's look at the next part of the podcast, because as I said to you before we started recording, I got so many questions in. Of course, we don't know the context.
Mm.
People just sending in issues they have or dilemmas they have, as opposed to specific questions. But it was such a lot of stuff coming in that I really got a flavour of, we're just not talking about this enough. People really don't know how to navigate some of these issues with friends. I also thought in so many of the questions that there's a real want for the friendships to last.
Yeah.
It's not like they're wanting to end it and move it. There is like a real need for that connection. My friendships have been feeling really competitive lately. Any tips?
Mm. Ouch. I
Yeah,
just felt it straight away.
I know. Look at me. Oh,
I know, I squirmed too.
yes.
Do you know, I think part of the reason why I squirmed is because I think I lost about 30 years. I went back about 30 years in that very moment. That idea of competitive friendships, it takes me out of being 45 and really something back to, well, yeah, around 50. So I wonder if part of the problem we have in competitive friendships is a little bit of that. We lose our grounded adult self
Mm.
and we find ourselves reenacting those experiences where, well, who was going to get picked for the sports team and who would be invited to the sleepover? And how did this person do in their exams? And well, was this person's shoes cooler than my shoes? I mean, it's all about the shoes today. There's something about this idea that when we were growing up and probably first experiencing competition, and I talked about that early biological stage of friendships about venturing out and separating from family, then it becomes about, well, how do I be me in a world where I get to both fit in and I get to be myself? So I'll use that word again about self-differentiation. How can I be able to be both an individual and be intimate and connected?
Yeah.
And competition really gets in the way of that. It's
Doesn't.
an idea that there's only one winner, there's a right and there's a wrong. Which side are you on? Are you team this or team that? And all of this stuff, I think, is very much about that adolescent stage. So maybe our listeners are finding themselves thrown back into a kind of a reenactment of adolescence. So we can get curious about that,
Yeah.
because it might be that we're in a situation that feels the same, but our resources are very different. But
Mm.
for me, when I think about competition as an adult, I start thinking about, again, what do I want? Do I want to win at this? Or am I uniquely original in some other way? And that's where I want to put my energy.
Mm.
Am I in a situation where I feel scarcity coming from this person? Do I feel that actually there is this sense that there's not enough for us all to be successful? And if so, I might emerge that conversation and say, hey, what's happening here? It feels like it's kind of a you or me thing.
Yes.
I might kill them with kindness, not as a manipulative tactic, but because actually I think on some level, there might be an unmet need for them there to be recognized or validated or acknowledged. So maybe it's something that I might choose to say, do you know what? That was absolutely brilliant what you did. I loved that. Or you looked fantastic last night. Or that piece of work you did was amazing. Or, oh my goodness, that dinner you cooked, gorgeous. Or the holiday you went on, how was that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might try and give them what I think they're actually asking for. Remember, generosity and goodwill, to
Yes.
see what I get back.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting that we do that continually if we never get anything back, but sometimes one of us has to make the first move in something competitive and see if we can kind of find our way through it and out of it into something that looks like teamwork again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost that selfless to be selfish, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
I
so.
use that, I don't mean that in an unkind way, but that kind of, survival really, isn't it? It's that, because you don't want to lose that friend.
Yeah,
There's something, it's an unmet need. Obviously, we
yeah,
don't know the context of this question, but the unmet need of that other friend and
yeah,
something going on there and how we can be a good friend back. I
yeah.
like that. Thank you. How on earth do I make deep friendship connections in adulthood? I'm finding it incredibly difficult.
Mm.
They mentioned that all their childhood friends had gone. So
Oh,
there's a real isolation there or a loneliness I'm feeling. But lots of people talking about difficulty to make friends in adulthood.
yeah. Gosh, I felt a real sense of compassion for that person's loss. And when they said that their friends had gone, that they've traveled, they're different sides of the world, perhaps they're lost, perhaps they've died, perhaps they've moved into different areas or stages of life that feel inaccessible.
Yeah.
What I would say is they haven't lost those deep friendships. Whatever those deep friendships meant to them exist in every cell of their body still.
Yeah.
They still have everything that those friends have created in them, that they have shared that time together, that they have those memories, that they have those experiences, that part of them may have been formed in those friendships.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been lost. So I say that, I suppose, to reassure our listener that whilst things have changed and you're feeling some sadness, perhaps there is much more that remains when we look more closely, that it's still about a precious gift of deep friendship. And I say that because perhaps our dear listener needs some of that sense of self-esteem that was attached to those friendships in order to move forward and make new friendships.
Yeah.
To remember that they have had those friendships, that they can make friendships again. And perhaps also to become a little more forensic about what they mean by deep friendship.
Yeah.
What do they need from friends? And what perhaps do they need from other areas of their life? A bit like I said about relying on that one pair of shoes.
Yeah.
If we said instead that friendship as a category was one pair of shoes, it still wouldn't be a good idea for me to rely on that category to meet my deep relational needs. So perhaps there are other spaces, relationship with themselves, relationships with family or colleagues or community, to volunteer, to try new things, and then potentially to kind of do some of those risky next steps in terms of, I know what I know about myself, I'm yet to discover more. Where might I discover parts of me that I haven't met yet? Where I might be met in friendship too.
God, Emma, that was beautiful. I loved the way you talked about the friendships already existing within you and they haven't gone. And just those stories are there, aren't they, in our nervous systems? They're
They
there.
are.
They're there.
Yeah.
You were a friend. You can be a friend. The friendships have made you who you are today,
Yeah.
the skills you've learned, the way of being. It's all there.
Yeah.
But also about, that came to mind was that about nothing changes if nothing changes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've got the awareness that we would like to make connections in adulthood, as you say, get curious about that. I would say journal on it, get the thoughts out, see what comes up. The community aspect, just volunteering, being part of your community. If you can't meet friends, if you just stay doing the same thing you've done every day at home,
Yeah.
do something different. They're not going to come and knock on the door, are they?
Maybe they are. What do we know? It could be the milkman's going to be your next best friend. We don't know. But there is something in there as well about recognizing, do you like yourself? Are you are you someone who you believe has the potential to make deep friendships? Because if you don't like yourself, and this is often heard in dating sense too, isn't it? If we don't love ourselves, how can we be loved? Well, if we don't like ourselves, are we going to find ourselves in friendships with people who we feel liked by? Possibly not.
No, I know.
And if I took it even further and became even more confronting, I might say, and are there things about the friendships that you have lost, about the friendships that have gone before, that you do want to do something differently moving forwards? Are there things that you have brought into friendships that you're going to leave out of friendships going forwards?
Yes.
Are there ways you want to become rather than ways you have been?
Yeah.
Because this is a really good time now to do that piece of honest accounting and figure out what you want to change and what you want to accept.
Yeah, I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's the perfect opportunity to look at the lessons learned.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely perfect for that, isn't it? I love
Yeah.
that. I feel like I'm a best friend to everyone, but no one is a best friend to me.
Mm.
Now, there wasn't a question, it was more just someone had put that as a dilemma,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So we've got no context there, but I found that quite sad because and actually this came up in a few other questions about giving. I give a lot to other people,
Yeah.
but I don't feel I get that back.
Mm. Gosh, I mean, there are so many ways that we could start to tease that apart. The first way I went, unsurprisingly, I suppose, because of my areas of interest, took me down a kind of people pleasing inquiry route.
Mm,
When we are a best friend to so many, when we give so much, why? What's our hope are we honest in the expectation we have, or at least in the investment we're making? Are we protecting ourselves from being hurt by not being anyone's best friend? Is there something that we're doing that means that we make sure we're taking care of everyone else's needs and we're only ever needs adjacent to our own?
Yeah.
Perhaps one way forward would be for this listener to start to get a little bit more in touch with her vulnerability and what frightens her. What frightens her about being someone's best friend? We can imagine she's aware of the positives because she gives them to others, but is there anything that she sees as a downside? Is there anything that might be holding her back or stopping her take that leap into deepening a friendship with one of those people that she's currently close to?
Yeah, that again, it comes back to that self-awareness, doesn't it? That self-reflection. And as you were answering that, I was thinking about a friendship issue from years ago, and it taught me such a lesson pre-training. I mean, it
Yeah.
really taught me such a lesson about who I was, and showed up in a friend, thought I was a good friend, would give, would support. And I would always feed back stories to my friends about things I'd been through, big things, after the event and after I'd resolved it and after I'd coped.
Yeah.
And they said to me one day, the two of them said, "Helen, you never ever talk to us when you're in it." And it made me realize that they were going to be there for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to receive that.
No.
I wasn't in a position to allow them to see me vulnerable.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm not showing off as my true self, am I? I'm giving them only part of me, and that can. God, even as I'm talking, I can feel that old feeling coming.
Yeah.
It feels that old wound is still there, but
Yeah.
true friendship allows you just to go, "This is happening." It's okay because I'm human. But
Yeah.
the old me would always keep part of me back. But yes, you're right. I would people please in the relationship. And I wonder whether there's an element, we don't know, but I wonder whether there's an element of that in this listener's.
Me too. Me too. Because I think there's something about, in your case, yes, you were protecting them from the truth of you.
Yes.
You weren't burdening them. And that's a word we hear so often in friendship issues. Equally, you weren't giving them your trust.
Mm.
And it's hard to connect deeply with someone who withholds, for I'm sure lots of good reasons, some level of trust. So really, we have this opportunity, don't we, to show up as ourselves and risk the fact that they might not see you.
Yes.
They might not accept you. They might not celebrate you in those moments.
Yeah.
But they might.
They might. Exactly.
And at some point, it's worth finding out.
It is. And this has been so beautiful. I've absolutely loved this. I've loved this conversation.
Me too.
Quickly. I can't believe how quick it went. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to come back and talk about friendship. So thank you so much.
Ever, anytime.
I'm going to take you up on that.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much if you could follow the show, leave a quick rating, and maybe even a review to let others know what you think and whether they may enjoy the conversation too. Your support genuinely means so much. Thank you. Enjoy your day.